All right, let's go and look at advocacy services. So again, I've suggested earlier that across Australia, advocacy was something that we didn't really understand. So I'm going to go across to yourself firstly, Craig. Can you tell me what is an advocate?
Yeah, I touched a little bit on it
Yeah.
before, but I think that it's important to understand that the advocate works on the side of the older person. So they're not a mediator. They're actually what we call as partisan, because they're out to fight for or work with the older person and their families. And that's really important because often there's a power differential between providers and the older person. And that's just a natural basis of someone having to receive care and being dependent, I suppose, in that sense. So the advocate is there to work on behalf of that older person, to take instruction for them, to speak up when they want them to speak up, to give them advice to be able to advocate for themselves, or to go into bat for them if that's what the older person wants them to do. And that can be things around, I suppose, if care's not being provided as effectively as the person will want to, if things are being done that they don't want done, or they're not being able to exercise their choice and control. So the services of the advocate are free, they're independent of all the aged care services, and they're confidential as well. The challenge is, I suppose, in areas like the Northern Territory, that we've only got 3 across the whole NT, and that's really, really difficult. So these people who do this role are so essential, and it's so essential here that it's about a relationship and trust, and the trust and building the trust in that advocate to older person or family relationship is so important, and that often has to be done face to face. So services are really, really stretched up here.
Have you got anything to add to that, Jim?
Just to, sort of talk to what Craig was saying, it's a big job here. We are stretched. There's a lot of older people requiring advocacy, and we do have waiting lists, and this is concerning.
Absolutely. Kim, do you have anything to add in regards to advocacy or?
Yeah, it's really important. It's incredibly important. Because particularly for Aboriginal people in remote communities, often it's very difficult for them to have their voices heard. And it's really critically important that they're able to access advocacy, to have someone to stand beside them, to support what their needs are. I mean, we do a lot of advocacy around particularly that palliative care stuff that I was talking about. That, they need someone who understands the service systems, who understands complaint mechanisms, because these are really difficult for someone who doesn't have English as a first language to navigate these systems by themselves. So the advocate plays a critical role.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And possibly just to add that, sorry, jump in again, but I suppose this is the thing we've at OPAN have been thinking about, is how do you actually do a model where a lot of it's outreach and you guys do amazing stuff around using networks and the people that are on the ground and building the trust with other people so that it can leverage. I know that it's the frontline workers out in these places and the providers themselves that do a lot of that work to help stand up for people's rights as well.
In fact, Kim, you were talking about a particular model that you utilise, which to me sounded extraordinarily powerful and something that I'd like to see more of. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yep. Our model is called Malparara Way, and Malpa is a Pitjantjatjara word for friend, and it's about 2 colleagues working together. So it'll be an Aboriginal person from the remote community, usually a senior woman that we will work with, and she will give us advice as workers on how to support people in a culturally safe way. She has language, which is incredibly important. To make sure that everybody is on the same page and understanding what the expectations are. She also will give us advice about family networks and about culturally appropriate responses to whatever the issue is that the older person might have.
Fantastic. That's a very strong bond, I imagine, that you have.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
yes.
goes deep. Beautiful. So let's move on now to what are rights. And I guess it's so pivotal that we reflect every day on our daily human rights of security and food, as we discussed earlier, etc. So and rights are, are vital to our everyday living. So I'm going to go across to yourself, Craig, first. What about human rights that I guess really resonate with yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken in these webinars before around when we've talked to people about the visiting the Jewish Museum and the issues there that around human rights and how they'd been breached, and how the idea of what you're entitled to as a citizen and the respect that you're entitled to. And I think that's particularly challenging in places here where just some of the basic human rights to food, water, clothing, housing are challenging to deliver in a non-Western, a culturally appropriate way that's culturally sensitive and responsive. So there's those basic things as how you're going to be treated, how you're going to be decided, but still the right to be respected and the right to actually access aged care is really important as well. So I think it's a nuance here because of the absolute need for some of those basics that are needed as well as the right to access aged care as well, like every other Australian.
Yeah, now that's very powerfully put, and I really appreciate your input, but we have no sound. So I've just got a text. So Jacob, can you hear me?
How old's the text?
Sorry. It doesn't give me a time, but anyway, I'll just continue.
It's been resolved as far as
Beautiful, thank you. So that's good. So I'm sorry about that.
That's right.
So we'll just finish off where you were. You were saying about how important it is for aged care that everyone has these rights.
Yeah, and I think for the little I know, being a southerner, is the need for flexibility.
Yeah.
And for models that are place-based and outreach as well. So I think that flexibility here, and that's about choice as much as choice and control, should be able to be here.
Yeah.
But is challenging.
Yeah, it's very challenging. So I know we were having a great conversation about rights before as well. So Jim.
Yeah, I think just going along what Craig was saying there about being, place-based, I think to be, servicing very remote communities, providing services, you need to build relationships with people. And, this is goes along with the Charter of Rights number 2, to be treated with dignity and respect. And so these relationships are built over time. And so you need to be able to spend time in community, solidifying these relationships to then provide service, And I feel, that people in the very remote communities are entitled to these services.
Yes.
And entitled to be provided with these services.
Yeah, absolutely. And that trust and relationship is difficult to build. It takes time, doesn't it? And often in these communities, it's a transitional service that comes with staff as well. So there's a challenge there, isn't there?
Yeah, there is a challenge, in staffing and recruitment. People that go out to work in community often don't stay there for long. And so, people coming and going and that sort of thing, isn't conducive to building good relationships and gaining trust and respect from the community to, be able to advocate, for older people. Probably Kim would be able to speak to that.
Yeah, so
Better.
I mean, recruitment and retention in remote areas is a big issue.
Yeah.
Certainly we find it challenging.
yeah.
Staff are sometimes exposed to vicarious trauma by seeing things in communities sometimes that are difficult for them to process. And those things can be related to the level of poverty in communities.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll find old people who aren't getting regular meals
Yeah.
or are sleeping on the veranda of a house rather than having somewhere that's
Secure.
safe inside. In the winter, in Central Australia, it can get down to -5.
Gosh, okay.
In the morning, and so you want to see old people in safe, secure places to sleep, to keep them well. You want to see people getting regular feed. You want to see people being looked after properly.
Yeah.
I think you've got to invest in your staff, provide them a really good level of support and supervision, make sure that they have access to services that will support them to keep on doing the work. I mean, our Malparara model also helps when you're working with a senior Aboriginal lady from the community, helps you to process what you see and to put it into context.
Okay.
And also, it helps to have a friend to support you, and to make you feel safe when you're out in community. I mean, there are things like dogs.
Yep.
You know, yapping dogs, barking dogs, biting dogs in communities. We've had the experience of one worker being bitten on the bottom by a donkey while she was in a community. So it's good to have other people around to support you and help you, and to help you maintain your positivity in doing the work. Because it's really important work.
Yeah, it is important work, and yeah, I thank all those workers out there. They're doing an amazing job, so big thanks to everyone. Excellent. So let's move on now to what is the actual Charter of Aged Care Rights. We might just have a quick video in regards to looking at the explainer video, and we'll take that away to you now.
From the 1st of July 2019, the Australian Government is introducing a new and simpler Charter of Aged Care Rights for anyone receiving aged care services. As a person receiving aged care, you have the same legal rights as all Australians. The Charter of Aged Care Rights add to these and are designed to help you by putting the focus on you, giving you choice, and making sure you are treated with respect. This video aims to help you understand these rights and how you can exercise them. We'll go through them briefly now. However, you'll also receive more information afterwards, and you can always ask for more information afterwards. Here's a quick look at all 14 of them. You have the right to safe and high quality care and services. You have the right to be treated with dignity and respect. You have the right to have your identity. You have the right to have your identity, culture and diversity valued and supported. You have the right to live without abuse and neglect.
Okay, it's a great explainer video. It really highlights, I guess, the consumer is at the centre of care, and it's about their rights and dignity. So important. So the Charter of Aged Care Rights effective from the 1st of July, and there are different time frames which we'll talk about again in a little while. I'm going to go first to yourself, Craig. So tell us a bit more about the Charter of Aged Care Rights and why is it such a pivotal change?
Yeah, so there were 4 Charters of Aged Care Rights and Responsibilities, and with the bringing in of the new quality standards, there was a need to consolidate those. But at the time, that then gave an opportunity to rethink what does this mean and put the older person right at the centre of this, and that say that this is not just a page that goes in the back of some contract or forms that people have to fill in. This is the way that providers should be working with older people, to keeping them empowered, and to, I suppose, know that, so older people know that they are protected as well. So
Yeah.
that's that rebalancing of the power dynamic that I was talking about. Interestingly, I mean, it applies to flexible aged care as well,
Yeah.
and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flexible
Yeah.
care model.
Model.
This fits there as well, and we'll talk some more about some of the challenges of promoting that, particularly as a collective rights of a community, and versus what often might be looked more as a bit of an individualistic way.
Yeah.
That down south we might look at it sort of thing as about me.
Yes.
What does this mean of the us in community as well, and
Yeah.
on country might be a bit different here.
Yeah.
But those things are still really powerful. Yeah.
Great. Kim, what does the Charter of Aged Care Rights, I guess, resonate with yourself overall?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's really important that people receiving aged care services understand that they do have rights.
Yeah.
It's challenging in communities because often in remote communities people don't have a lot of choice. There may be only one provider in the community, but most providers in communities are doing an incredibly good job of looking after the needs of older people in their community. Remote service providers tend to employ local people to work,
Fantastic.
which is really important.
Yeah.
I mean, for Indigenous people living in remote areas to understand the Charter of Rights,
Yeah.
the Charter should be available in their
Yes.
languages.
Yes.
And we shouldn't assume that written information is appropriate.
Yeah.
These languages are historically passed on verbally, and some people actually can't write the language even if they can speak it.
Yeah.
So it's important, particularly for older people, to provide the information in a way that they can access it.
Yeah.
So audio or having someone who speaks their language explaining the rights is really, really important.
Yeah. I think it's such a pivotal point that you make that we need to address, and I think through OPAN and through other channels that we acknowledge this and create those avenues for understanding as well. Yeah. Yeah, that communication is so important.
Yeah, it's critical, really.
Yeah, and it's that cultural awareness, isn't it? That deeper cultural awareness, not
Yeah.
just the 5-second, yep,
Yeah,
this is what we
just-
know.
Yeah, just people attending a half-day cultural awareness course is probably not enough to really deeply understand culture. I think that you need to have sort of daily supervision and support. You need to have senior Aboriginal people involved in the committees and directors of the organisations that are delivering those services, and involved at the most senior level of managing those services
Yeah.
to make sure that the way services are delivered is culturally safe. Giving advice on a day-to-day basis to staff on how they should be interacting with older
Yeah.
people in those facilities.
And that probably, even with the charter, really goes to that right number 3 about
Yeah.
having your cultural, not just respected,
Yeah,
but cultural being and diversity being valued and supported. And what you've talked
Yeah.
about, Kim, there is a really interesting way of saying this is what valued and supported
Yeah.
means, because it's bringing it into the organisation, bringing it into almost the DNA of
Yes.
how an organisation works.
Yeah.
That cultural is just lived and valued and supported.
Yeah.
Yeah.
celebrated,
Celebrated. Yeah.
beautiful. Jim, do you have anything to add about the Charter of Aged Care Rights? And I am going to ask you about your favourite one very shortly.
I think Kim did a pretty good job of covering it, but
Yeah.
I just feel that people in remote communities are entitled to have their rights respected as all other Australians, and they're entitled to the rights on this charter.
I agree. Very powerfully written, 14 rights. This is the booklet that you can download from the Department of Health website, and you can order also order some for your facility and utilise them as a educational tool. They do come in 18 languages. As we discussed, they're not actually in any Indigenous language at the moment. There are multiple dialects, as we have chatted about, so I think that's something we'll address at some stage. Page 1, you can see the 14 rights. Simple, easy to understand, and very powerful. So, Kim, which one really resonates with yourself? I understand 3 would.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And number 10,
Okay.
to be listened to and understood. That
Okay.
Quite often when we have clients and families complaining about services they're receiving, often when you kind of dig down to find out what actually happened and what the issue is, it will be that they weren't necessarily listened to or understood.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's because of the language barrier.
Okay.
Because the older person might be speaking in a language that the carer doesn't necessarily understand. Sometimes it can be a much more complex cultural issue.
Yep.
It's about the carer or carers not understanding how to provide services in a way that are culturally safe.
Yeah.
But often it's misunderstandings.
Yeah.
It can be little tiny misunderstandings
Nuances.
that can create really big issues
Absolutely.
over the long term.
Some of that can even be facial or gesticulation, those differences.
Yeah.
Language, yeah. Not only spoken, but the physical. So important. Great, thank you. Craig, what's your favourite? Or which resonates loudly with yourself?
I'm going today to pick 11 because I think have a person of your choice speak on your behalf, but also including an aged care advocate. And we've talked a bit about that, the importance that it might be a peer, it might be another person in the community, it might be uncle, it might be auntie, it might be someone else that's able to help speak up and make sure that people are getting what they deserve, their rights and their access to aged care. But it also might be one of our wonderful aged care advocates, and would like to see more of them here that can help support what the amazing work that people do in building that trust and relationship with the community.
And the importance of understanding that extended family, or what really is community. Yeah, it's not just your neighbour. Does that make sense? Yeah. Beautiful. All right. Which is your favourite?
I'm going to say 5, to be informed about my care and services in a way that I understand, which Kim just spoke about too, about the language barrier, and that we do need to be able to provide that to older people in community. Excuse me. And, that it's not always written. It's spoken, and in some cases like hand signals, hand language. So we need to be able to explore that for older people in these areas to be able to have their rights, to understand.
Excellent. Such important knowledge here, and understanding our Indigenous peoples and how important it is to protect our elderly. Yeah, excellent. We're going to go to a video now, and they're actually, it's the explainer video, but it's discussing the rights. We're going to go 1 through to 4 and then 5 through to 11. Thanks for that.
You have the right to be informed about your care. You have the right to be informed about your care and services in a way you understand. And you have the right to have access to information about yourself, including information about your rights, care and services. You have the right to have control over and make choices about your care, personal and social life, including involve personal risk. You have the right to have control over and to make decisions about the personal aspects of your daily life, financial affairs, and possessions. You have the right to your independence. You have the right to be listened to and understood. You have the right to have a person of your choice, including an aged care advocate, support you or speak on your behalf. You have the right to complain, free from reprisal, and to have your complaints dealt with fairly and promptly. You have the right to personal privacy and to have your personal information protected. And finally, you have the right to exercise your rights without it adversely affecting the way you are treated.
Lovely. Again, I think the explainer video portrays those rights quite well and can be utilised as an educational tool. We're now looking at the Charter and the aged care quality standards and how they actually align together to provide aged care services. I want to go first to Craig. So tell us about how they align, why it's so important that we have the framework and the rights.
Yeah, and I think the applicability here is, I suppose, in the implementation of the standards is really interesting when you're looking at flexible care services and how do you actually, I suppose, make sure that there is an appropriate minimum standard there as well. But the standards are really trying to put the older person right at the centre and saying, whatever we do and whatever we plan for you, we're going to do it with a focus on you. And that's a kind of a fundamental principle to the new standards which came in on 1 July. So the standards, I suppose, is saying to the provider, this is how you sort of run the show and what needs to be done to meet the minimum safety stuff. And then the Charter is really the facing the other way, coming from the older person's perspective and saying, oh, this is what I can expect from you as a provider. And I think it'd be interesting to hear from the panel about how does that apply in a situation out here where it is remote models of or outreach or in place-based models that you're trying to deliver services, and how do you ensure that quality and the rights actually get through and out there as well?
Yeah. We'll go to Kim. It's a big question.
It is a big
Yeah.
question. I was just thinking about flexibility being really important.
Okay.
That, one of the really positive things about some of the remote aged care services is that people have the flexibility to come and go from the service as they want to be spending lots of quality time with family, to having family coming in and out of the aged care service, supporting them, to have plenty of outdoor areas. People often actually choose to and want to sleep under the stars. So having the flexibility that you can allow people to drag their bed frame out and sleep under the stars, having fire pits so family can come in and they can build a fire and cook kangaroo tails, understanding that when cultural business is happening, that older people have a role in passing on their cultural knowledge to younger people, and facilitating that, having the flexibility that people can still participate in those events that are really important, allowing people to come and go to attend funerals and sorry business. Just being aware of what's really important culturally and having the flexibility to be able to provide an opportunity for older people to have a life that they want, that that they're still participating and taking part in things that happen in the community.
that elder role is just so crucial, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It is, because older people hold all the important
Memories.
cultural knowledge, which has to be passed on verbally, orally to younger people. It's not written down anywhere. Yeah,
Okay.
people have information, critical information in their heads, and they need to
Wow.
have that opportunity to pass that information on appropriately.
What you said there just really resonated with me, of linking almost back to the Charter as well, is that about number 7, about the right to personal and social life and making choices around those, and even when those choices might involve risk. I can
Yeah.
imagine some of the providers down south going, oh, fire pits or beds out outside or those sorts of things, and it would be like, we can't do that. But it is. That's what this person needs. It's where they feel safe. It's where they feel connected. So the ability to be flexible over that's amazing too, and yes, balance the risk, those sorts of things. But it's still the person's right. And number 9, which is about independence. That's just so amazing that can be facilitated in some cases.
Yeah. Excellent. Gorgeous. Alrighty, so we've now going to look on some of the provider responsibilities that have come around the Charter itself. And one of the biggest ones we're finding is that we need to support and understand the consumer or the client or the resident to understand the Charter and to really provide that time, and as we've also discussed, understanding of the nuances here in regards to language and the different ways that we can impart that language. So let's have a look at signing in regards to the Charter, and I guess some of the challenges you guys must be facing across the NT.
I think it's about education. Marie, I think that a lot of people don't understand it and don't understand that it's come in on July 1. And it's just about getting out there and educating providers and older people that this Charter is effective, and you know, giving them the support around that. And you know, for providers, I think you know, staffing with you know, training to be able to provide that care in culturally safe ways, and you know, so that they're aware of what the older person needs.
Yeah, the education, grassroots education across the board, you know, providers, workers, and obviously, and most importantly, the consumer and their families. You're not, lots of nodding going on there, Kim. Do you have anything to add to?
The only thing I would add was, yeah, we would sort of see a role for champions.
Okay,
people
yeah.
who are senior people with an understanding of what the rights are, who would then go out and talk about that in communities. That's really important. That's a good way of that information filtering through, rather than having a whole lot of written information that people aren't necessarily able to understand or access. It's good to have people out there who are respected in the community and who can talk about it and encourage people to utilise their rights and to follow up when they're not happy about something.
Yeah.
Are they like a broker or something like that? Is it someone that's trusted in the community? Yeah. How? Because that's one of the things I suppose we were thinking about. How do we help people? What supports is needed out there to help get this message out?
I think it'll take time, but initially, I guess the way that we try to disseminate new information is to hold some workshops with those senior women and get them comfortable with what the Charter is and what it means. Part of those workshops might mean translating those the aspects of the Charter into language, and then that helps the women to understand at a really deep level what it's about. but we would do that kind of multiple times to get people really, really comfortable with it. Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like a great idea, because it's bringing those examples like you were before about the bed and the fire pit, those sorts of things. What would be real to people. I know that the department has been working with some providers up here to, I suppose, get the quality standards being, what does this mean for flexible care and that sort of thing. So that's a great idea for that. Thanks.
Yeah. And that's why we travel. This is exactly why we do these sessions, is that we can get the on the ground information and some really innovative ideas of how to, I guess, reach everybody and provide everybody with the same amount of rights and aged care services. Fantastic. So we've got a quick video on signing, because signing the charter has been...
And it's going to be a challenge up here.
It's going to be a massive challenge up here. So we'll just watch the video so that we understand that it is the provider that must sign and provide that education. And the consumer is invited, however, doesn't have to. So we'll just go to that video now.
Your provider will have already signed the charter. Your provider will have already signed the charter, showing that they understand your rights. If you're comfortable doing so, we recommend you sign the charter too. By signing, you're showing to your provider that you also understand and recognise your rights. If you're not comfortable signing, or you have concerns about your rights not being upheld, talk to your aged care provider, family, friend or carer. Don't worry, your services will not be affected if you choose not to sign the charter. If you prefer to talk to an independent representative, contact OPAN, the Older Persons Advocacy Network, on 1800 700 600, or visit their website at opan.com.au. Alternatively, you can ask for more information, give feedback or raise a complaint about your services with the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission by calling 1800 951 822 or by visiting agedcarequality.gov.au. The Charter of Aged Care Rights, proudly shared by OPAN, the Older Persons Advocacy Network, and quality aged care providers across Australia.
Excellent. So, signing the charter. Now, that's obviously going to have its own challenges here in rural and remote communities. So, Jim, what are some of the aspects, I guess, about signing the charter that you've found in your experience here?
I guess that some of the aspects of signing the charter is, in remote and very remote communities is, people might have some mistrust towards paperwork. In the past this has, been associated with other things, and it's all about, helping people to understand what this is all about. And we spoke about cultural brokers, and Kim spoke about Malpa in their programs, and we have cultural brokers ourselves, and it's about going through those networks that are already in place to help people understand, exactly what it's about, and that it's not another piece of paper that is going to, cause worry or fear in the community.
I bet. And I'm sure it does cause worry and fear.
I think any introduction to community with paperwork always worries people.
Kim, do you have anything to add to that?
We get people to sign all sorts of pieces of paper because we are required to get consent.
Yeah.
But we try to provide information in very plain English. We use Malparara Way, so we're working with a senior Aboriginal woman from the community to help relate what that consent is, what that information is that the client is signing off on, and continually talking about it whenever we go to see the client again, reminding them about that, reminding them that they can withdraw consent at any time, that they're in control, and giving them as much information as possible to feel comfortable with that process.
Yeah, I guess that dual respect is so important, and particularly when it comes to looking at signing something, that they can remove that consent, like you said, and that ongoing conversation and the right to say, this is not good for me, it doesn't fit for me, and I'm not going to continue this any further if need be, I think is also very, very powerful.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, Marie, because it's not only sort of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island communities who've had challenges with trust. We've been discussing with Forgotten Australians as well, and people with mental health issues, that there are challenges to actually pushing paperwork, which has been when there haven't been there's been challenges with trust and broken trust in the past. So I think we need to be sensitive and think about ways, and at OPAN thinking about ways we do that in a really sensitive, caring, non-traumatic way.
Yeah, truly sincere. Absolutely. It's just so important. All right. So we're now going to be looking very briefly at some of the record keeping. So in regards to record keeping, the consumer, client, resident should always have a copy that they can retain for themselves as a discussion point as well, if need be, but also that the facility provider has a copy as well and maintains that in an appropriate place. Please don't send it to the Quality Aged Care Standards Committee and or the Department of Health, as we've found in the past. Quickly looking at some time frames. So time frames for signing I'll gather my thoughts, is important because it's changing, particularly for community Commonwealth home support programs. So Craig, I'm going to go to you if you can remember all those dates.
Yeah, just offhand, I won't try and get it right. There was the idea of sending out a letter. We know that might be challenging with more remote areas, those sorts of things, but people should be given even this brochure of information for if they have, obviously, the language challenges. But really through to June next year is really around the community home support. And I think even with the flexible cares, that idea of there does need to be continuing conversations and the idea that it's not necessarily a one-off. So that sort of idea of just saying, we had a chat about some of the rights, it was documented, that sort of thing. I think that's, if any quality checks, that's what they're looking for. Is the spirit in sometimes at what this is doing, and while there is these things to try and say, this is when the expectation is to actually think about, well, why are we doing this? We're trying to empower the older person. We're trying to empower the collective community out there as well to understand this is part of their rights in this country.
Absolutely. And I think it's the whole conversation. It's looking at how we age, ageism, how we look at and respect our elderly, and then also ourselves. What do we see as our ageing? And we've always, within many of our webinars, been very proactive in about ageing and planning for the future. So important. Okay, consumer responsibilities. We're very briefly going to finish up on a few consumer responsibilities, and that is, if we have rights, everyone has rights, and that's to treat everyone, and that includes providers and workforce, with respect and keep them safe. And as you mentioned earlier, Kim, there was a donkey that wasn't particularly within the charter.
That's right.
So those sorts of things also must be unique here as well.
Yeah, there are some unique situations in remote service provision, definitely. I mean, even just the travel, the fact that you have to be comfortable with often travelling hundreds, if not thousands, of kilometres over remote roads.
Yep.
So there's a special skill set
Yeah.
that comes with that. There's special training you need, four-wheel drive training.
Yep.
And and travelling on your own can be daunting for some people. It's very hot out there.
Yeah.
If your car breaks, or if you have a flat tyre and you've got to change
Change
the
it.
tyre and it's 42 degrees
It's
out
not
there,
easy.
and you're all on your own in the middle of nowhere, it can be pretty
Daunting.
scary and daunting. for
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. No, that's a unique skill set that you would require as
Yeah,
well.
Yeah, but I'd also like to say how incredibly amazing and
Yeah.
wonderful it is out there.
Yeah.
How the country is absolutely beautiful. How it's been a privilege of the last 15 years of my life to be able to see some of that very remote Central Australia and to work with senior Aboriginal women who tell me the stories of the dreaming when
Wow.
I'm travelling in the cars with them.
That's very special.
Being out there is also, although there are challenges, there are incredible rewards
Yeah.
working in that remote environment.
Fantastic. And again, thank you to you and your staff out there that are doing such an amazing job. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Excellent. So that brings us to the end of today. I'd really like to thank you both for your time and expertise. It's just, it's crucial to the ongoing conversations and planning in regards to the Charter of Aged Care Rights, but providing appropriate care services to all older Australians. Craig, thank you again for your time. That's been fantastic. And goodbye from us here in Alice Springs. It's been fantastic to have you all, and take care.